On this edition of the Koffers, we're getting biblical up in here. Oh, we live in the best of times. There's a Japanese Godzilla movie. There's an American Godzilla movie. And if you watch this channel, you're probably a fan of the Monsterverse stuff. I am. I know a lot of people are. I love it. It's been a wonderful odyssey, especially considering the first version we got back in 98, but we don't like to talk about that. No, instead we're focusing on some positives here. So one of my grips, though, as I just said, we're focusing on positives. This is not so much of a negative. It's more of like, you could do a little better. Legendary has not really done the most that they can with their original creations. By original creations, I'm talking about the monsters that show up in the Monsterverse movies. Your Methuselah, your Scylla, Mudos to an extent, Warbats. But most egregious of them all is the fact that there is no real mainstream behemoth figure. Now, Chris, you have a behemoth figure in front of you. What the heck are you talking about? Well, we are going to be talking about the world of designer toys today. And this guy comes from a little company called YMSF. And if you have been in the Godzilla collecting circles for a while, and I know some of you who are watching haven't, YMSF is a sculptor from Japan who gets small licenses to make pretty much Godzilla figures that either he didn't like the Bandai versions or there were no versions that Bandai ever made. So late in 2022, he showed off this sculpt for a behemoth, and lo and behold, he produced it. So we're going to take a look into this slightly unofficial behemoth figure from the good people at YMSF. So if you've watched this channel, I've already reviewed a couple of YMSF's offerings. I reviewed their G-Fest exclusive Zilla, or Godzilla, that was modeled after the animated series color scheme, and their Octopus and Sea Serpent, respectively, from King Kong Escapes, and pick your Toho movie with an octopus in it. So just a little background, if you guys didn't watch that video, which I recommend you go back and watch. YMSF is a little model maker or toy maker, it is a little both, out of Japan. From what I gather, he gets these mini licenses to do limited runs on figures that are based on Godzilla characters. And back in late 2021, he noticed a bit of an egregious issue with the fact there were no behemoth figures. Now, there are technically two behemoth figures that are officially licensed. There's one from Playmates, but it's only 2.5 inches tall. And then there's one from the good people at Spiral Studios, but it is gigantic and more in line with an X Plus, and wildly expensive, but that's what you get for quality. So the people at YMSF took it upon themselves to turn this awesome character from the Monsterverse into a Bandai scaled figure. And like all of YMSF's offerings, these are hand sculpted, technically, and hand painted. As you can see, they use airbrush techniques to give you nice little detailings. So they'll do molds, and they'll make a couple of runs of each figure they make out of that mold in different color schemes. So this was the first run of the behemoth that he offered, which is hues closer to the version we see at the end of Godzilla King of the Monsters. When you buy him online. He sells them through his Instagram page. So they are done in very limited numbers. And that, I think, is to keep, whatever licensing agreement that he has. As to whether or not he has a license for this is neither said nor done. I'm not sure. I can't tell you for a fact. But on the other hand, it is awesome to have a behemoth in my collection because he is arguably one of the best original monsters that Legendary has created. I believe director Michael Dougherty actually is responsible for his creation and maybe partially his design. I've heard in some interviews. But come on, it's a giant sloth woolly mammoth monster. And in a world of giant monsters, I feel there's not enough representation from the Ice Age. Like, I need more megafauna kaiju in my life. And that's why this guy is so cool. Even non-fans that I've shown this guy to think that is an awesome design. So, he stands about, little about 6 inches tall. And as you can see, the horns are removable, or the tusks, not horns. Let me get them correct. That is mostly for shipping. So when he ships these things, they are pretty much put in a box and wrapped up in pretty much bubble wrap and sent on their merry way to their new owners. Let me get that back in there. Hold on 1 second. There we go. All fixed. So the detailing on the paint isn't 100%. As you can see, his face is not painted in. His eyes aren't painted in. But one thing I have seen from more hardcore collectors, when they receive these figures, they will add their own detailing to them. And if you're good with an airbrush or a paintbrush, that's kind of the point of some of these. He has offered them in blanks to be custom painted, and he has also offered them in other color schemes. I've seen it in a black and gray, and I think there was like a green kind of glowy version too. But that said, done in very, very limited runs. This guy ran me about, I think it was like $80 all said and done, American, which isn't bad for something that pretty much, there's only going to be about 600 of them made. That said, he's awesome. I love this thing to death. I love the fact that it's, people are kind of taking the initiative to make their own monsters, and that there isn't enough Monsterverse, ancillary characters out there. There needs to be more. I would love to have Methuselah. I would love to have Askilla. I would love to have more, maybe a Muto Prime, stuff that Legendary has created. So actually, I wouldn't mind seeing this guy show up in more stuff too. And that was one of the little things I was disappointed by Monarch with, but to be fair, the timeline doesn't really match up. So hopefully the Monsterverse movies continue on, because honestly, my hopes and dreams would be a buddy team-up movie with this guy and King Kong. I feel like he would be a perfect sidekick to Kong. So there you go. That is this Behemoth figure. I know it's a pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and pretty quick review, but to say that there's more to this figure would be pretty much just padding time, and I don't want to do that to you guys. So, if you like what you see, we do have a show. It's called The Kaiju Kingdom Podcast. You can find us at thekaijukingdompodcast.com. If you don't want to download, you can always find us on your favorite podcast streamers like Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you find better podcasts. We're also on social media, X at The Kaiju Kingdom, Instagram at The Kaiju Kingdom, and Facebook.com/The Kaiju Kingdom Podcast. And with that, that will wrap up this mini edition of the Koffers. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.